Hello everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you a very intense video about an incident that happened during Hai and Tieu San's trip back to their hometown. After the misunderstandings on that rainy spring night, when little Ivy was found safe in her family's arms and all the panic slowly faded, CEO Hai's house gradually returned to its familiar rhythm. There were no more hurried footsteps running through the rain, no more flashlight beams sweeping across the dark fields. Instead, there was morning laughter and the comforting smell of hot rice filling the kitchen. Tieu San sat by the porch watching Ivy play in the yard, her heart finally at ease. After that ordeal, she no longer felt out of place like she had during her first days visiting the family. The way Hai's mother looked at her had changed, warmer, more trusting. Her questions were no longer cautious, but affectionate, like those shared between true family members. As a result, wedding plans began to resurface during family meals. They were no longer casual mentions, but detailed discussions and clear intentions. Hai would look at Tieu San while the elders talked, his eyes quiet yet full of certainty. She understood that after everything they had been through, both of them longed for a lasting bond, not only because of love, but also because of responsibility toward their family. The atmosphere in the house during those days felt lighter, as if the rain from that night had washed away all the unease. But they didn't know. The strange man who had called Hai that day had never truly left this land. He hadn't disappeared like a passing breeze. He stayed in the village, silent like a nameless shadow. Hidden among the familiar dirt roads and crowded market days, he quietly observed every movement of the family. His gaze was no longer a fleeting glance, but a patient, calculated watch. Their daily routines, the times they left and returned home, their trips to the market, their gatherings, seemed to fall under his cold surveillance. That afternoon, while the sun still cast a gentle glow over the red-tiled roofs, Tieu San went alone to the village market. She wanted to buy a few more gifts for relatives, hoping to show her thoughtfulness before the wedding plans were discussed more seriously. The countryside road was peaceful as always. Vendors called out their goods, bicycles rattled along, and the scent of fresh herbs mixed with kitchen smoke in a familiar scene. Yet inside her, a strange feeling began to stir. It wasn't clear fear, but a vague intuition, as if someone were silently following her every step. She turned around several times. She saw only unfamiliar faces passing by, a few indifferent glances that quickly shifted away. She reassured herself that perhaps she was overthinking after the recent incident. But when she left the crowded market and turned onto the dirt path behind the cornfield to take a shortcut home, the space suddenly became unusually quiet. On both sides were rows of low plants, the wind rustling through dry corn leaves, creating a long whispering sound. Her unease grew stronger. Then, as she stepped past a narrow bend, a motorbike suddenly sped up from behind and blocked her path. It all happened so fast that she had no time to react. The helmeted man said nothing. His arm shot out and grabbed her forcefully. The entire incident lasted only seconds, but it was enough to leave her stunned. The bag of gifts fell to the ground, packages of snacks scattering across the dusty road. She managed to cry out, but the hand tightened around her, pulling her onto the motorbike. The engine roared as the bike sped down the narrow dirt road. The sound of the motor blended with the rushing wind in her ears, carrying her desperate scream into the vast emptiness behind them. The rows of corn on both sides blurred into streaks of color, leaving behind only the silent road and tire tracks pressed into the earth. At home, while everyone was still unaware of what had just happened, Hai's phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. The short line of text was cold and direct. "If you want her safe, come alone to the old warehouse at the end of the village." His heart felt squeezed tight in his chest. All surrounding sounds seemed to fade away. He read the message again, searching for any sign that it might be a cruel joke. But the harsh reality remained clear and merciless. No police. No telling the family. Those thoughts flashed through his mind like strict commands. He knew that even a second's delay could put Tieu San in danger. There was no time to analyze or discuss. There was no other choice. Hai grabbed his car keys and stepped out of the house, forcing his face to remain calm. Inside, his heart pounded wildly. He didn't want anyone to see the panic in his eyes. The door closed behind him with a dry, echoing sound in the still air. The car sped down the familiar village road, but everything felt different today. Every turn, every shadow beneath the trees made him alert. In his mind, only one thought repeated over and over, in rhythm with his racing heartbeat. He had to save Tieu San. No matter what awaited him ahead, he would not allow himself to hesitate. The old warehouse dock stood isolated at the end of the village. It had once been a gathering point for agricultural goods, but now only stained walls and rusted tin roofs remained, screeching whenever the wind blew through. Night seemed to fall faster in that desolate place. The sparse streetlights were not enough to illuminate the wide yard covered in cement dust and dry leaves. The cold air seeped into the skin, carrying the damp smell of rotting wood and corroded iron. Hai stopped his car in front of the warehouse gate, his eyes scanning the thick darkness inside. His heart was still pounding, but his steps did not hesitate. He walked in, the sound of his shoes echoing softly against the empty cement floor. From deep within the shadows, a figure slowly stepped forward. Under the faint yellow light slipping through the cracks of the door, the man's face gradually became clear. It was the same man who had appeared in the village days before. Those eyes, that posture, unmistakable. He was neither hurried nor tense. He simply crossed his arms and looked at Hai as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Behind him, Tieu San was being held back, her hands trembling, yet she tried to remain calm when she saw Hai. The man let out a cold laugh that echoed through the hollow space, sending chills down the spine. "I just want you to know, her past isn't as simple as you think." The words were not loud but sharp as a thin blade. Hai clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. He did not take his eyes off the man in front of him. His voice dropped, steady and resolute. "No matter what her past is, it's not your place to decide." The air between them tightened like a stretched string. The mockery in the man's eyes suddenly vanished, replaced by suppressed rage. He gritted his teeth and suddenly shoved Tieu San hard, sending her crashing onto the cold cement floor. The dull thud echoed inside the empty warehouse. She cried out softly in pain, her body curling slightly against the freezing ground. In that moment, something inside Hai snapped. He could no longer maintain his calm composure. All that remained was the instinct to protect the woman he loved. He lunged forward without hesitation. The two men struggled in the dark yard. The sounds of shoving footsteps, heavy breathing, and bodies colliding reverberated against the warehouse walls. Their shadows stretched long across the ground, flickering under the weak light. The kidnapper fought back fiercely, fueled by resentment that made him reckless. Hai tried to maintain control, pouring all his strength into every move. Everything happened quickly and intensely, as if one small mistake could push the situation beyond control. Amid the chaos, the sound of wind outside suddenly blended with hurried footsteps approaching from afar. Fortunately, before leaving home, Hai had quietly shared his location with a trusted family member. He hadn't explained why, just left a signal in case something went wrong. And that caution became his lifeline in this dangerous moment. As the struggle grew more violent, flashlights suddenly swept across the warehouse yard. Loud shouts shattered the heavy silence. Family members and local police had arrived in time. The bright beams shone directly into the kidnapper's face. He staggered for a brief second before being restrained by firm hands. The cold click of handcuffs echoed through the night. Gradually, the chaos subsided, leaving only heavy breathing and the metallic sound that marked the end of a dark scheme. The truth soon came to light. He had once been involved in business with Tieu San in the past. Failed investments and poor decisions had caused him severe losses. Instead of taking responsibility for his own mistakes, he blamed her. In his bitterness, he convinced himself that she was the reason for his bankruptcy. Over the years, resentment grew into a desire for revenge. He wanted to destroy her happiness, to drag her into the same darkness he had pushed himself into. In the cold warehouse yard, once the danger had been contained, Hai rushed to Tieu San's side. He knelt down and pulled her tightly into his arms, as if afraid that letting go would cause her to be taken away again. Her body trembled, not only from the cold, but from the aftershocks of fear. Tears silently rolled down her cheeks, soaking into his shoulder. "I'm sorry for dragging you into all this trouble." Her voice choked with guilt, but Hai gently lifted her face, placing his hand on her cheek. The fury in his eyes softened. "You are not trouble. You are my family." The words were neither loud nor dramatic, yet they were powerful enough to push away the lingering darkness. In his arms, Tieu San broke into tears, not from fear anymore, but from the feeling of being protected and understood. In the abandoned old dock, under the cold night and flickering flashlight beams, that quiet declaration became a firm anchor, continuing the journey they had walked together, from misunderstanding and danger to this very moment, where they still stood side by side, unwilling to let go. A few days after the incident at the old warehouse dock, when everything had gradually been clarified and the man responsible had been dealt with according to the law, the story could no longer remain confined to that single dark night. Hai's family eventually learned the whole truth, not from outside rumors, but from the worry he could not hide in his eyes, from his phone calls with the local police, and from Tieu San's unusual silence in the days that followed. That evening, the whole family sat together in the living room. The atmosphere was not as heavy as Tieu San had imagined. She had prepared herself for scrutinizing looks, for questions digging into a past she herself wished to close. But when she stepped into the room, what she received was completely different. Hai's mother poured her a glass of warm water and placed it gently in front of her without saying much. His grandmother, the eldest in the family, slowly walked over. Her hands, wrinkled by time, gently held Tieu San's. The grip was not tight, but warm enough to ease the lingering unease in her heart. "Once you've made it through this storm, there's nothing left to fear." Her voice was low and steady, free of blame or interrogation. Just a simple sentence filled with understanding. Tieu San lowered her head, her eyes stinging. She had not expected that when the truth came out, what she would receive would not be distance but compassion. News of the kidnapping quickly spread through the village. People talked, but not in the harsh way she had feared. They felt sympathy for her. A young woman forced to confront the consequences of her past, just when she thought she had found peace. Those who once saw her only as CEO Hai's girlfriend, now looked at her differently, with the respect reserved for someone who had faced hardship and remained standing. More than anything, the image of Hai rushing alone to the old warehouse that night, daring to face danger to protect the woman he loved, made his family trust his choice even more. No lengthy declarations were needed. That action proved everything. A man who could place someone else's happiness above his own safety. That was the kind of future pillar any family would hope for. Conversations about marriage were no longer vague ideas. They became clearer, more certain. Not to stay ahead of gossip, but because after everything that had happened, everyone understood that their relationship was no longer just an early spark of romance. It was a conscious choice, made after walking through danger together. In the days that followed, Tieu San gradually found her smile again. Sometimes the memory of that cold night at the warehouse would still flash through her mind. But each time it did, she remembered Hai's arms around her, remembered the words he had spoken in that dark yard. The sentence was not loud, but it became a steady anchor in her heart. That afternoon, soft sunlight stretched across the yard. The end-of-day light was gentle, not harsh, quietly touching each step, each potted plant by the porch. Tieu San stood in the middle of the yard, her hair moving lightly with the breeze. The panic that once clouded her face was gone, replaced by calm after the storm. From inside the house, Ivy ran out. The child's laughter rang clear and bright, breaking apart any lingering silence. She hugged Tieu San's legs tightly, looking up with innocent eyes untouched by the recent turmoil. Tieu San bent down and stroked her hair, her heart softening. There are things in life we cannot avoid, but there are also things that make us strong enough to continue. And one of those things is family. Hai stepped out last. He stood behind the two of them and gently placed his hand on their shoulders. The touch was light, yet meaningful. No more promises were needed, no grand declarations. His presence alone was enough to say that he would always be there. The afternoon sunlight slanted across the yard, casting the shadows of the three of them onto the brick ground. The shadows blended together, no longer separate. The storm had passed, not in the sense that it had never happened, but in the way they had faced it and moved beyond it. This time, under that gentle sunlight, they were not simply loving each other with sweet words. They had overcome a real trial together, and that was what made their love stronger than ever. If you follow Tieu San and Hai from their very first misunderstandings, from that anxious spring night in the rain to the moment they held each other tightly at the cold warehouse dock, then you've probably felt it too. Love is not just about gentle words, but about choosing to stay when the storm arrives. Their journey does not end here. After this trial, will life finally grant them lasting peace? Or are there still unexpected challenges waiting ahead? Family, happiness, and the major decisions of their future will continue to unfold in the upcoming episodes. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to press like to support the video. Your support is the motivation behind investing more care and emotion into the next episodes. Don't forget to leave a comment and share your thoughts. What do you think about Hai's actions? Do you believe that love becomes stronger after overcoming hardships together? Every opinion you share adds new depth and perspective to the story. And most importantly, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the latest developments in the journey of Tieu San, Hai, and their family. Ahead are more warm moments, unexpected challenges, and life-changing decisions waiting to unfold. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. See you in the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến video về câu chuyện tình yêu của Tiểu San và CEO Hải. Và hôm nay thì họ đã gặp phải một khó khăn khá là lớn trong cái quá trình mà về quê nghỉ Tết cũng như là thăm họ hàng ở quê. Thì Tiểu San và Hải đã gặp phải tình trạng là một kẻ thù cũ, người mà trước kia từng làm ăn với Hải như trong cái quá trình làm ăn thì cả hai bị thua lỗ, và anh ta mang lòng căm hận đối với Hải thì đã bắt cóc Tiểu San. Và tính là Hải, cô cũng rất may mắn là Hải đã dũng cảm đến cứu cô, và trong thời khắc sinh tử thì cảnh sát đã đến kịp thời và giải cứu cả hai. Vậy thì liệu diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào? Mọi chuyện có thể tới đây là kết thúc hay chưa? Thì hãy cùng mình đón xem những tập sau để biết thêm chi tiết của câu chuyện nhé mọi người. Và đừng quên đăng ký kênh của mình và để lại một like để ủng hộ cho kênh của mình mọi người nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại trong những video tiếp theo. Bye bye.